Betsy and Thomas here for the American Intelligence Media. Thomas, we've been very busy lately, so we haven't been able to do a Betsy Thomas show. We had 2 blockbuster audios, one about the Jesuits, where you talked to someone who has studied the Jesuit situation so that our audience would know more about why the Jesuits are working to control the world. And if that isn't enough, we did another video with Michael Thomas, who's the editor of State of the Nation and also has many other sites that you may know of, like the Millennium Report. And we did a report on what we're seeing in California, these devastating fires. And so today we're going to look at the tweets of November 15th. Thomas, are you ready to get started?
Yes, Betsy, I thank you for inviting me over here to the studio and doing this, because people really need to know that you need to listen to your president and you need to respect the office because he has tremendous power. It's just such an honor to be seeing what we're seeing because it is historic. When he says that these things are historic, he's not the only one saying it. It is a reality. We are in a historic time, and these tweets will go down in history as one of the most amazing advancements for the presidency that there ever has been.
Well, it's like we're walking out of the dark ages, and everybody's having to hold on to the rope to get out into the age of light. And we hope that we're helping you, like geopolitical Sherpas, to find truth. You know, it's so upsetting when you open up the news and you see reports that are clearly disinformation, yet you see people falling for it. Thomas, just recently in the news, there's this Mexican reporter. He's embedded in the caravans, and now he's talking about Kim Jong-un coming with missiles in Russia. And you listen to it and you go, oh my gosh. And people believe this stuff, Thomas.
Well, that's because they're watching it off the mainstream media, which has subliminal programming. They could run anything they want and still make you believe something that isn't even on the screen.
Well, it's not on mainstream sites. It's that YouTubers are picking it up. And it's just sensational stuff. So we hope that our listeners here are more discerning, that they look to see who is the source and why are they saying it and what is the agenda. And has Trump tweeted out anything about this? Or if you don't follow the Trump tweets directly, perhaps one of your favorite media collaborators that you trust is talking about that issue. But remember, question everyone, even question ourselves.
I see what you're saying, Betsy. I'm sorry. I completely missed the point. Yes, you're absolutely right. The nonsense that's being talked about, the caravan, it needs to be investigated very carefully, because some people believe completely the opposite of what's happening, and it's going to be blamed upon the standard people, but then it's going to be blamed incorrectly upon those people. So George Soros has already dodged the bullet, saying that he isn't providing this money for this invasion of America with the caravan. Incorrect. Organizations that receive money from the Open Society Foundation certainly do, and the Tides Foundation, as well as many Catholic organizations, as well as, yes, the Russians and the Chinese. What happened was they get oil from Venezuela, and Venezuela, they're basically using it, as always used, as a launching pad for the rogue CIA and for every spurious government national intelligence agency is in Venezuela. Has been since the time of Jimmy Carter. And that's where, as we've told you, Malik Brown, working for the United Nations, developed Optech, which controls every election in America as the software that every single digital machine uses. So what's going on is Venezuela is providing some of the money. Soros is providing literally cards, debit cards, literally handing them out. We also saw at the beginning that there was money being handed out. That was Soros money, and he's very famous at that. His organizations have infinite money, and they only have a few people in them, and they do what they're told when they get a message through social media, and that's what this all started as. The social media start of this particular caravan was directly from Russian and Chinese influence working together. That's what Michael Pence said, our vice president, when he sent people down to investigate this. People who are being embedded come up with all kinds of stories because there's everyone in this caravan. To think that it's just one thing or the other is crazy. Here's what's really in the caravan, and here's what's really going on. In Peru and Bolivia, about $500 million has been spent to bring Hezbollah into South America. And they are being embedded in this caravan. We are seeing Hezbollah, of course, that's the Iranian money given by Obama to Iran, billions and billions, I forget exactly how many billions, but 4.7 billion in cash, and some say 140 billion in other funds, as well as releasing funds and sanctions and paybacks and interest on the money, blah, blah, blah. So Obama gave the money to Iran. Iran used it in the Revolutionary Guard and on Hezbollah. Hezbollah moved into Iraq. That was the Iranian Revolutionary Guard winning the war in Iraq and stopping ISIS and Al-Qaeda, which is basically what came through Syria into Iraq, and then they pushed it on into Syria, and then Hezbollah's pushed it into Lebanon, and now right up to Hamas. And now Hamas is using Hezbollah missiles paid for by Barack Obama. Barack Obama paid for those missiles, 300 of them that recently attacked Israel. Let's make this perfectly clear. And where is half of the money that they spent this year going? To Bolivia and to Peru, creating an incursion into South America that we better pay attention to, because these invasions are not simply people seeking asylum. As a matter of fact, they've found that very few of them meet the requirements for asylum. So I believe that's what you were talking about, and so I'm sorry if I went off in the weeds.
Well, that's not really what I was talking about, but it doesn't matter. Let's move on to the Trump tweets. November 15th. The White House is running very smoothly, and the results of our nation are obviously very good. We are the envy of the world. But anytime I even think about making changes, the fake news media goes crazy, always seeking to make us look as bad as possible. Very dishonest. You know, Thomas, the mainstream media, and I include Fox News in there, as I always do, and Drudge Report, and all the places that you think you're getting conservative patriot news where you're not. These people are enemies to the United States, to America. I want to see some forceful action about this runaway fake news propaganda.
Well, we're so close to that because it has been said again and again by Kelly, by Mathis, by Trump, by everybody. These are national security issues when they attack him with lies, propaganda, yellow journalism, all for the sake of playing their game. Now, let me explain that game in just a minute, but you're right. The mainstream media is the enemy of the state at this point. And if you look at who owns it, it's the same corporate interests that also make money off of war. They make money off of chaos. They make money off of stock market crashes. They make money off of manipulating any chaos. That's why Soros is so good at it. Any country Soros goes near, George Soros, because he is the arm of the rogue CIA, and he also works through the Privy Council of the Brits, through the Queen's Privy Council. He is basically he's the leader of the European Union. We'll get to that in a minute. The reason that they have to attack Trump is, here's the game. The presidency is a popularity contest. When a mainstream media think that they can attack the presidency and then still have the right, somehow there's a given right by the mainstream media to demand that they be able to continuously attack the president, be rude, even put their hands upon interns in the White House. This is ridiculous. So what we're seeing is that for the fourth time, Kelly has said, I'm not going anywhere. And because his girlfriend...
No, it's a professional pairing.
Sorry.
That's what they call it. A professional pairing.
Yeah, so his lover, his professional pairing. Professional pairing.
Well, it makes me wonder now, whose team does Kelly really play on? I mean, you have to begin questioning the people that are closest to Trump. For example, has General Kelly given Donald Trump the Mueller Act notice that was submitted? Has he seen the writ of mandamus where citizens called for paper ballots prior to the election to keep this fraud from happening? Is Kelly giving Trump this good information, or is he, because he's aligned with Kristen Nielsen, who has done nothing, absolutely nothing for border security and election integrity? She's done nothing. She's a globalist who was there to protect her master. So one has to wonder if she's in a professional pairing with Kelly. Who is Kelly?
First, let's go back. Trump has been barely able to get anybody on his team, and so he has to take the best that he can get. He has interview after interview, and then he's got to move on. Kelly is a general. He takes orders. He came in after good old Reince Priebus, who was a complete soy boy noodle. And what you need is someone like a military person to manage the insanity of the uniparty, because the uniparty has to play to the mainstream media that they are partisan when they're not. They're all playing for the same globalists, the same lobbyists, the same U.S. Chamber of Commerce. the same vested interest, except a very few of them, and they stick out like a sore thumb, like Jim Jordan. And we are sorry that Jim Jordan didn't become the leader of the minority in the House. It would have been good. But it's going to be a complete clown show, three-ring circus with lots of elephants for the next 2 years, if Pelosi, and she will probably be the Speaker of the House. But anyway, going on, what we are seeing here is that Kirstjen Nielsen has done a terrible job, and this is the second caravan, and the first leading edge, the avant-garde of the caravan, has already crossed over the fences, and nothing was done. And so Trump let her do that. Trump let her mess up the elections. She was also in control of the coordination of the elections. Remember, the position of Homeland Security is the highest position there is. It's actually above all other agencies. It's supposed to coordinate, like the SS did, the entire pyramid below them. And so Homeland Security position, there's only a couple more that actually are more sensitive than that. And so getting her out of there is good. But he let her, just like he let these elections, show themselves for being the yellow belly
You know what's even worse is because you've got these Jim Acostas out there asking stupid questions. When Sarah Sanders goes out there and answers their questions, they're stupid questions. These journalists are stupid. They don't ask the right questions. But what they also do is they keep people like us, not that we would do it because we really enjoy our retirement, but it keeps inquiring citizens who have good questions from being in that room, asking the good questions. So they need to either move their party to a bigger room so that more journalists around the world can participate in asking good questions, or they need to just close down this little daycare operation they've got going in the White House called the press room.
The Sergeant of the Arms in the Congress and the Senate will remove anyone who's out of order. Each and every one of those journalists that you're speaking of in that presser that was told they could have one question, that would even preface their question saying they're going to ask two questions and then insist on follow-up questions, should have all been removed by the Sergeant of Arms.
But they don't ask the real questions that need to be asked.
No,
and it's
not
questions of grilling the president and showing that he is weak or anything. They're questions that Americans need to know about. Like, we need to know about this outright attack on Californians right now. Why aren't these reporters asking those questions? Because we need to know who is attacking America. We need to know more about the globalists and what Trump is doing to protect the nation against this globalist faction.
Until he has the mainstream media silenced by the prompters from Avid and ISIS Management and Leader Plus that provide them even with the election results on election night, which now they're going with. They're going with Leader Plus's results on the night of the election. In other words, can Trump stop the mainstream media? No, but he has declared war upon them. He's declared war upon the southern border. He's declared war upon trade deals that recently, it's unbelievable what TPP has done to the nations that are inside of it. They now have a government that is above all of those nations that have signed up to that. That's the Five Eyes nations plus Singapore and one other nation. The ones who signed up for TPP have just signed up for a type of fascist Nazism in the economic realm where there is no more nationalism and countries are subsumed by higher forces and corporations. Corporations now have rights that are beyond national rights. They used to have rights beyond individual rights. Now they're rights beyond national. So when we're talking about this, the mainstream media has to be silenced of their lies because they are national security attacks upon the presidency. And when he sets up the rules in a presser saying you get one question, and Jim Acosta wants to go on to 6 and 7 and push people around, and then they want to bring a lawsuit. Listen, here's the deal. He said long ago and pointed out, there doesn't even have to be a press corps. Yeah. That is a courtesy, folks. And that they use that courtesy to abuse the presidency with lies.
I think they
propaganda
use it
is evil.
I think they use it as a buffer to keep the real questions from being asked from any honest journalist. But let's move on.
That's a very good point.
Yes,
I went over the top of that. That is absolutely true.
Run distraction.
It's distraction.
Because remember, we are in the great information war. This is a war we're in. And you out there listening, you're an information war. Your job is to get out the information you can to your circle of influence, and that the way that they can understand it. For example, not everyone in your circle of influence is going to want to hear you talk about the globalists taking down California in the way they have with these firestorms, because they're going to say you're just crazy. But maybe you can just show them, hey, you've got a smart meter on the outside of your house. I understand that these things burst into flames and they've caused a lot of damage. You can find a lot of audios and videos on the internet about that in articles. Maybe all you do is just talk about that one little point with your neighbors. You have to slowly wake people up. They are not going to be as woke as you are. So my question is, what are you doing to help your circle of influence waken? And then the next tweet we move to is, the inner workings of the Mueller investigation are a total mess. They have found no collusion and have gone absolutely nuts. They are screaming and shouting at people, horribly threatening them to come up with the answers they want. They are a disgrace to our nation and don't care how many lives they ruin. These are angry people, including the highly conflicted Bob Mueller, who worked for Obama for 8 years. They won't even look at all the bad acts and crimes on the other side. And then in big caps, Thomas, a total witch hunt like no other in American history.
And in the next tweet, he even refers to history, so I'm going to start right there. If we go 20 years, 25 years in the future and look back, you're going to have a different view of Bob Mueller. You're going to believe the truth of the matter, that Bob Mueller was part of 9/11. He was part of changing the evidentiary rules for federal courts, in other words, rigging the federal courts. He trained the people who were the patent thefts, who to this day still control the IP theft and work with China, because that's the way that they're basically marketing it, distributing it, and getting their piece of the pie. So Mueller was in from the beginning with the Clintons at Starr Law Firm in Little Rock, Arkansas. Believe it or not, that is still where they control the whole digital kingdom that belongs to the digital monarch, Hillary. And so Mueller has always been her hitman. He delivered yellow cake for her uranium to Putin personally in the Uranium One deal. So what we're watching is, here's Mueller, one of the most corrupt people in American history, that in the present doesn't seem like he's bad, just as they thought Hitler wasn't bad in the present.
And now we're finding out his relationship to this guy, Joe Sullivan.
Oh, yes. And Joe Sullivan is another one of these, actually he's a lawyer who Mueller trained in California, and basically has just been put in charge of all the security positions of many of the major top tech companies, one after the next, even though he had at Uber a breach of 57 million private information on drivers and passengers. Doesn't matter. Then he goes on to the next high-paid position. So he's a Mueller prep. That is who Mueller has following him, is a group of people who want to be just like him. He is the king daddy right now.
Well, I think also more than a king daddy, I think he is the leader of this rogue army of anti-Americans that have entrenched themselves in our government. You know, part of it is the senior executive service, but it's a lot of other things too. And Mueller is the head. And I said many, many months ago, in the end, you're going to see these two factions rise up with their two leaders confronting one another. And it's Mueller versus Trump. Mueller is running the black hats, Trump's running the white hats. And so for him to call Mueller out like this, I think is saying, look, dude, put your gloves on.
It's also telling Matt Whitaker, again, publicly, do your duty, do your job. And what is happening here is exactly what you said. Mueller is the field marshal. He's the SS field marshal attacking, and he doesn't stop attacking. He's been bombing Trump continuously since July of 2016, when John Brennan started the counterintelligence attack against Trump running in the campaign, basically a rigging of our election, then turned into deposing our president, a regime change, a George Soros regime change, and Mueller is the field marshal, and he has to keep up the attack. So recently, another reason that Trump is saying this in between the lines is because Mueller just asked for some further action against Rick Gates. He has harassed every single person that Roger Stone knows, including his housekeeper, everyone he's talked to in the last few years. Because why? Roger Stone communicated in a text message to Guccifer 2.0. Anyone could. He was on the internet. Because he once said that he had an inside track on Julian Assange, and they were getting ready to come out with some real breach material that is connected to Hillary, perhaps, and certainly Hillary's campaign. It didn't specifically say Hillary's emails and Podesta's emails. So they're going after Roger for bragging a little bit, okay? And everybody knows. And you have to get lawyers. And it's taking down all these people. That's what Trump is talking about. And Mueller is going crazy because he went crazy on, what's her name? Daphne... Friedrich.
She's the judge in this case with Concord Management. And by the way, Concord Management... Attorneys, if you are listening to us and reading Truth News headlines, you're doing an amazing job calling this circus out the way it is, because I'm impressed every time those lawyers write something or say something in court. They just call out Mueller's BS.
They were 1 inch away from having Daphne say that the entire investigation is illegal. They barely got away by the skin of their teeth, Mueller and his gang of angry
But
Democrats.
Now Mueller has to prove his case.
Well, he has to prove his case against Concord Catering, which he can't.
Catering, yeah.
Because Concord Catering didn't have a troll shop. And that troll shop was in existence 4 years before 2016. It had nothing to do with the Trump election campaign. And that's already a proven fact, and everybody knows that. Because we know where it came from. Daniel Jones and his Pincorder group carried on for Fusion GPS to create oppositional research against Trump, and they gave it to Mueller. That's where Mueller gets all his stuff, gang. Mueller's an idiot. All he is the frontline defense hitman. He is a Chicago mafia hitman trained by the mafia, second in charge of the mafia of Chicago, which was Hillary's dad. Hillary, Rodham, Clinton, Rodham, Hugh Rodham, Al Capone's. He followed right after Al Capone. He was an alderman in the Chicago mafia, the worst. And so Valerie Jarrett carried on that tradition. Michelle Obama worked in tradition.
That's where Mike Obama
and Barry
the
Soetoro,
first trainee in the White House.
They all worked under Mayor Daley, the most corrupt city government in American history. And who took it over afterwards? Rahm Emanuel. So when someone was asking me who's in charge of the Chicago mob now, it's Rahm Emanuel. But anyway, we need to just go on. Okay. I want to go just to the point that the reason Trump is all upset about this is because they thought it was coming to a close because they were finally getting ready to answer some questions for Mueller. And I want to make this clear because there's many victories that can happen that if you're not paying attention, you won't even see them happen. And there are gigantic victories. And here's a victory that's about to happen, very possibly. And that's that Trump is going to answer some written questions about obstruction of justice. Well, there can be no obstruction of justice with Comey because that was his subordinate. It's not possible. So he can answer those questions. But if he answers the questions, then the entire content of Robert Mueller's report, and remember, after all of this, last count, 20 million, probably 30 million by now. After all of that, there's going to be a report that's going to be made right now if it was made. And the reason Mueller had to file some more documents was because he couldn't quit while Whitaker was the acting attorney general. Because if he did, he would make sure that the report was never made public, except he would give a summary of it stating the same thing Rod Rosenstein always stated. There's no collusion, there's no corruption, there's no conspiracy, and Trump was never under investigation.
Okay, so the next tweet is a little bit about that history. Universities will someday study what highly conflicted and not Senate-approved Bob Mueller and his gang of Democrat thugs have come to destroy people. Why is he protecting crooked Hillary, Comey, McCabe, Lisa Page and her lover, Peter Strzok, and all of his friends on the other side? Well, of course, Aim for Truth patriots know exactly why he's covering for these globalist puppets.
Of course we do. Because he's one of them. But what he's saying here is what I was mentioning a minute ago. Universities in the future will talk about this time just like we talk about Hitler. It's like the way that we Americans think back on Nazis and Hitler. And we ask the question, Well, why didn't anybody stop him? How about the common people? Didn't they notice this was going on, the concentration camps?
When they first started out with this Homeland Security thing after 9/11 and the uniforms were ready to go, even the colors picked out, the name ranks and the badges, I went, are you kidding? This is what the Nazis did during the war. They came up with the SS, and that's what Homeland Security is. And then you've got Mueller, hello, with a name like Mueller, you fit right in there, don't you, Bob?
Michael Chertoff recently got his piece of the pie within trust. Because why? He was the diverse director of the SS Homeland. He was the first fascist who made sure that he got a piece of the pie to the crypto keys on the internet, which is where all of the really corrupt people go to retire. But anyway, going back, this is a message might as well be made to all of us to say, stand up, wake up, pinch yourself. Robert Mueller was complicit with 9/11. Why would anyone ever say he was ethical? He just came from WilmerHale. He worked for HSBC. He is Comey's bunk buddy. He's stolen more patents than you can count. Don't even get me started. Melon Optima, the whole thing. He's the most corrupt. We've described all this in intelligence reports. Put in his name in the search bar on the site, and you can come up with all kinds of stuff about Mueller that then you will realize he's not a good guy. He's one of the most corrupt people there ever was. So this is a message directly to Matt Whitaker. Matt, go after them. And in case you forgot who they were, that would be what you already acknowledged. Hillary Clinton is crooked. Comey, who must have some kind of a super immunity because nobody's taken him to task for all of his perjury, all of his lies, and all the stuff he was fired for. And the other investigations have not been trash canned and new ones started. So this is basically all the different investigations that have to be opened.
We need to look at James Baker. We need to look at Valerie Jarrett, Samantha Powers. I mean, the whole rotten bunch of them, they were all globalists trying to take down America in a coup d'etat. And the reason that people are not awake to this is because they thoroughly brainwashed and programmed you over a series of decades so you would not even know what the history of the United States is, and you wouldn't question the things that they're doing. I'm telling you, if they can run a false meow flag like they did at 9/11 and these buildings come down and Americans just stood there frozen not knowing what to do, they have sufficiently brainwashed you.
There are animals whose brains scramble every 20 seconds. That's what they do to your brain when you're using anything on the internet. And so you forget history. You forget what you were reading. You forget what you were just doing. And in the television in the old days when the subliminal programming came on, I used to do this trick. Turn the TV off, ask the people in the room what they were watching. None of them can remember. All they can remember is some desire they have, which was a subliminal programming coming through the last commercial they watched. And so that's what's going on. And he's basically saying this isn't just a special investigator. These are specific investigations within the Department of Justice that must now be open because the president has said it again. It was ignored by Jeff Sessions. It was ignored by Rod Rosenstein.
But those are both globalists.
But Matt Whitaker has already made statements that he knows Hillary's corrupt and that he knew that Robert Mueller's investigation went too far. So we know that Trump is not going to stop Robert Mueller's investigation. It doesn't really matter. It's kind of like allowing Pelosi to become the Speaker of the House or allowing Maxine Waters, who can't stay awake during the meeting, to be in control of huge amounts of money. That's absurd. So what is he doing? He's giving 2 years to show the debacle of the end of the Democrat, what are they called? Democrats? Yeah. The Democrat Party. It's at the end, and he's showing it. And he's letting the election be a perfect example, the border be a perfect example, and what has happened with Kavanaugh is a perfect example, and Pelosi's a perfect example. That's how bad they are.
Well, he tweets out the next tweet. The only collusion is that of the Democrats with Russia and many others. Why didn't the FBI take the server from the DNC? They still don't have it. Check out how biased Facebook, Google, and Twitter are in favor of the Democrats. That's the real collusion. Now, that is a tweet that is packed full of info.
Yes, it is, because the collusion was for sure on the parts of the Democrats. We've shown that so many times with Alexa Chalupa. with the Democratic National Committee. Now, what he asks here is, why didn't the FBI take the server from the DNC? Now, the lies about the FBI and the DNC, about the only people who are going to tell you the truth is us and a couple other sites I'm not going to mention, because sometimes they're so right on and they're so right off, I'm afraid I don't recommend anybody. Because what you have to do is pay very, very close attention. That the FBI had already come to the DNC, the Democratic National Committee, and said, hey, we think your server has been messed with. And they again and again and again and again and again said, no, leave us alone. Now, why would they do that? And why did the FBI know that they'd been messed with?
Because they're all hiding their coup d'etat plans?
Pretty much, that's exactly it. And let me put it in just the simple terms. On the DNC was the proof that George Soros gave $2 billion in illegal election campaign donations fraudulently, as well as they used a special system for election manipulation that was created actually by Sir Geoffrey Patty and the British Privy Council when they had used it previously in elections, and they put it onto the DNC. So there were two parts. That's the reason Seth Rich, who was aware of the rigging of the election through the DNC, because he was a Bernieite, he got mad. Why? Because in working in half of the server, he found out that they were able to target people through the internet and go and manipulate them to vote for Hillary. And he got very mad about that because he watched it happen also 17 times in a row in 17 different primaries, which Bernie seemed to ignore and just kept going on. And then he was specifically asked to change over after Bernie lost, to move over to the other section of the server of the DNC. And on that other section was the money section, who donated, how to attack those people and get donations, but also the tracks of George Soros through John Podesta and the way that John Podesta was controlling the DNC committee, the Democratic National Committee, through Debbie Wasserman Schultz, Donna Brazil, John Podesta, Alexander Chalupa, Dmitry Alperovich, and the rest of the gang. I could list them all, but who cares?
So where is the DNC server now? Because this shows all their rat lines.
Oh, it's been cleaned so many times that it's been taken into pieces, and George Soros personally took a sledgehammer to smash parts of it, because, you see, the DNC, at the same time that it was breached, not only was it breached, so was Podesta's emails, so were Hillary's emails, so was the DCCC, the Democratic Caucus Committee of the Congress or something. Pelosi was in charge of it, the DCCC. It was hacked, but worse than hacked. It was a breach. They got everything that Imran Awan was getting out of the Congress through that one, and no one wants to talk about that one. That was Guccifer 2.0. And then there was the DC leaks, and that was Guccifer 2.0 took George Soros materials and the George Soros Foundation and released those, which are so damnable that if you read them, you will realize that he is worse than Hitler. He has a plan, and his plan is very sick. It's to take over the world through taking advantage of nations that he turns into chaos. He took the concept of the Council on Foreign Relations, the clash of nations, and he made it the clash of economic sectors. And he basically has attacked every single economic sector that was vulnerable and won. We shouldn't allow him into any economic sector.
Yes, but worse than that is that they are using modern technology to create this digital tyranny, because, Hillary Clinton was in on it from the get-go to steal the trade secrets from Leader Technologies, to then allow Facebook, Google, Twitter, and all these people, including the Democrats, to use that technology against the American people and our will. And that's in this tweet too, because you're talking about the collusion of Facebook, Google, and Twitter. It's far deeper than what you see in this tweet. This goes all the way back to the IBM Eclipse Foundation, where James P. Chandler and his people that were around him at that time stole this technology so that they could use it to control the world.
Absolutely. They weaponized the internet, and unfortunately they allowed it to enter commerce too deeply. But what you've just said is crucial, because Trump keeps mentioning antitrust, he keeps mentioning monopoly, and now he has actually met with some of these people, and the Silicon Valley cardboard cutout warlord tech kings, as you mentioned, as in this tweet, Facebook, Google, Twitter, and others, we saw blatantly that they attacked conservatives, they attacked Republicans, and they put Democrats up. We saw blatantly that they said, oh, this isn't a free platform. No, we're private. We have a user agreement, and we say we can do anything we want, so just get out of here. Sorry, Trump, we're going to take your Twitter account away from you.
Well, what Trump needs to do is sign the check to Leader Technologies and get this all straightened out so that these Googles and Twitters and Facebooks and all of them, they'll know that we're on to their original theft.
And Oleg Deripaska is the Russian who worked with the Democrats. He worked through, as we just mentioned, Daniel Jones's group,
Pin Quarter Group?
Pin Quarter Group, taking over for Fusion GPS. But also there was Russian money involved in Fusion GPS because Natalie Veselnitskaya was a client of Glenn Simpson, who is basically one of the leaders of Fusion GPS. Before Trump Tower setup with Donald Jr. was done with the State Department, allowing this Russian spy to come in, Natalia Veselnitskaya, there's the Russian. That was the setup. She was paid to come in, and so were the other Russians who were in the room.
Yeah, but we know they're not going to work on uncovering that. Mueller isn't. Mueller is there to protect himself and his complicity with 9/11 and the rest of the criminal outlaws that are in Washington. And it's as simple as that. And
Absolutely.
That's what it is. And now Whitaker's in place, and Patriots, we need to sit back and see what he does. I don't want to hear what he has to say. I want to see what he does. And we will know him by what he does. Now, the remaining tweets, I know you might have a little bit more, but let's talk about where we're going to go from here. The remaining tweets are about 4 tweets. I'm going to have them in the link. I keep a little link there. You go into it. There's the tweets. And plus, I always leave some other goodies for you. But these are tweets about his visiting the veterans, the VA. Then it talks about the VA Accountability Act and a lot of stuff about the military, the Marines. Is there anything that we make of these tweets as a collective whole of what he's doing with the military?
Right now, the world is going crazy. As he pointed out with the Mueller investigation, it's going crazy with the Kavanaugh thing. It's going crazy with everything. The election, everything. It's completely crazy. You see China running ships in between Taiwan and China that are loaded. They're doing military exercises with live ammunition. So what did we do? Oh, we took some of our naval ships through that same straits. China wants the South China Sea. So what do? We send our ships there. Oh, Iran wants to flex its muscles. What do? We send our ships there. What is going on? Trump has a 2-year-long commitment with the NDAA and with the omnibus budget. So it doesn't really matter because they just recently did the first audit on the Pentagon. They said, we can't audit the Pentagon. The Pentagon said, we can't be audited. As you know, the numbers go way up there, but let's just say trillions of dollars missing out of the Pentagon budget every time they look, and yet there's never even been an audit. When they do the audit, it's going to be about 20 trillion more than likely. Probably the entire debt to the U.S. Federal Reserve. But what is Trump doing? He's flexing his muscles, and he's telling everybody, get ready, because our military is stronger than it's ever been. And by the way, we keep showing you that the nonsense that Hillary sold to the Chinese and to the Russians, supersonic missiles, they don't work. And all this other technology, it doesn't work. Don't you understand that was a setup, Russia and China? Don't you understand you've been played by the queen of Walmart? You have been played by Hillary Clinton. She's even moved to your economic free zone to get a 17% discount on all of her deals with Entrust, Axion, and all that soft money that she has through the crypto keys. And she allowed Michael Chertoff to get part of those, and that was his payoff as the SS director of Homeland Security. So Hillary and Breyer and Eric Schmidt and so many of them thought they could go to Kissinger. They thought they could go to China and just take advantage of China because they haven't moved into capitalism, and they would be economic war hawks in terms of their stock market, in terms of setting up what they did in Russia and the Russia satellites around the USSR, the Russian the countries around what is now Russia, which formerly was called USSR, Turkmenistan, Afghanistan, Azerbaijan, all of those. What happens is, as they try to do that to China, they're going to lose, and all those people investing, they're all going to lose. So what's happening? They're trying to flex their muscles. So China went in and told North Korea, don't kowtow to America, and that's the reason for the delay. China has gone in and is trying to take Taiwan, so Trump moved the largest company, tech company, out of Taiwan into America and has invited the other three next largest to come into America, which probably will happen. So behind the scenes, he can't even tell you his strategy, but his strategy at this point is to build the military up so it's super strong, pull back all of our soldiers and have peace, and defend ourselves and stop defending corporate interests in foreign countries.
Right. Well, it makes sense when you understand that the globalists, again, I keep talking about this, but I want people to understand we got these two teams right now that we can easily identify. The globalists had infiltrated themselves in the U.S. military industrial complex, and they've been run it for their own benefit, not for the benefit of protecting the United States, but to protect the globalist and to roll out their agenda. So I really like this idea of us just pulling all of our military in, protecting our borders. Let's hunker down. Let's get America straight and back on the right road.
Now, what I'm upset about is Merkel and Macron's statements recently saying that NATO's okay, but they need a supplement and they need a European Union army, a standing army in Europe. Okay, that's against, did they forget the First Reich, the Second Reich, the Third Reich, and this would be the Fourth Reich? I mean, did they forget Nazi Germany? Did they forget that Germany right now is screwing everyone in the European Union by bringing in Russian oil through a sanctioned Nord Stream 1 and 2 oil pipelines coming into exclusively Germany? Did they forget that Germany is giving $400 million to Iran against the sanctions America has put on Iran? Did they forget that Germany is part of also providing false intelligence in relationship to Israel and Syria and Iran and Iraq? Did they forget that Angela Merkel is George Soros's number one advocate for open society in the European Union? So when they preached this nonsense, which isn't nonsense, it was in fact a declaration of war. It literally said, here is what they said, and both of them said this: we must defend ourselves against our enemies, Russia, China, and the United States of America. Okay, NATO is over, folks. That was a declaration of war. So the North Atlantic Treaty Organization that defends the European Union, that makes sure that Germany does not militarize again, that makes sure that Germany doesn't again try to take over France immediately, which looks like it already has diplomatically, which tries to defend Europe. Okay, the invasion is a Soros-Angela Merkel invasion of Europe, in alignment with Barack Obama's bombing of 7 Muslim countries that would produce these supposed migrants. They are not migrants. They've now ordered them out of Europe, and Soros is going to charge $86 billion a year to screen them before they come in. But Angela Merkel and Macron want their own standing army. Well, they can have their own standing army because you know what? Russia is not their enemy. And when they said that there's incursion in the Eastern Front, what are they talking about? The only incursion on the Eastern Front is in the Balkans. It's in Montenegro. It's in Albania. It's in Macedonia. And guess who it's by? It's not by Russians. It's by George Soros. In Romania, in Bulgaria, okay, do they not understand that NATO is being disassembled by the work of, it's actually being assembled into a mass group where it even controls Britain? That's the reason Brexit is being fought by George Soros. He wants Britain back in so that there's only one central bank, so he can control that central bank, the central bank of the European Union. He wants those nations in. And so he's gone and he's disrupted them so that they would have to turn to central banking loans. And once that happens, then he's going to pull them into the European Union. And that is the incursion on the Eastern Front that NATO should be working against, a person called George Soros. And another person, Erdogan, the person who's running Turkey, he's their enemy, not Trump, not America. So y'all better get it lined up, Angela Merkel and Mr. Macron, who I think is a complete puppet and doesn't know anything. He's kind of like Trudeau, literally has no clue.
Their elections were rigged too. Le Pen was supposed to win that election. We saw the crowd she drew. But they do the same thing over there that they do on our election boxes. They've got this people around the world. You got to go with paper ballots. That's it. There are too many crooks running around in the world today. They know how to cheat us, so we need to keep it simple until we get this world right.
And if you want war, European Union, you just lost the war with the invasion of the radical Islamic fascists who you've invited in to destroy your social services. So if you really want war with America, we'll just draw back. We'll stop defending you. We'll get a peace agreement bilaterally with Russia and a separate one with China, and we will ignore the rest of you, and we will close down the other nations that want to have nuclear weapons for the sake of supposedly as a deterrent. A deterrent to who, India? A deterrent to who, Pakistan? Your personal little war should have ended a long, long time ago. A deterrent to who, France? A deterrent to who, Germany? Who is it that you are deterring against? Do you understand that Russia wants to take apart all the missiles and even has the contract with a group called Fusion, LLP, in America to take apart America's nuclear warheads? Do you understand that the Russians and the Brits control our entire uranium enrichment, which feeds our atomic nuclear power plants? So who do you think you are fighting against with your deterrence of having nuclear weapons? Putin has said he wants out of all of it. The USSR has done a great job in dismantling their nuclear warheads. And China doesn't have so many because they know that you only need a few. You only need a couple. A few that work, and then you have the deterrent you need. That's the same thing with what Iran wants, what Iraq wants, what Iraq wants. Syria, they don't say it, but that's what they also want. They all want the atomic weapon. Why? Because it's the maximum deterrent, so then you get into the group to make the real globalist deals. Well, we need to stop all that nonsense, and we need to dismantle all of the nuclear weapons.